Liverpool's Playhouse Theatre and the surrounding areas before, during and after World War II. Due to a lack of regional statistics resulting from World War II, it's hard to know exactly how many Liverpool soldiers served in the war, were unemployed, or evacuated post-war. So on occasions such as these, national statistics are used to give some evidence for the context. The UK declared war on Germany on the 3rd of September 1939 and issued the National Service Act for the armed forces on the same day. This enforced the conscription of all UK male citizens between the ages of 18 and 41. The resulting loss of men in the city would have had a large effect on Liverpool's employment, family lives and trade. Liverpool's decline in population between 1931 and 1951 suggests large numbers of Liverpool soldiers dying during the war. Liverpool's population is still continuing to fall today, with the population sitting at 466,415 in 2011, suggesting World War II to be the major catalyst for a gradual exodus out of the city of Liverpool. Following the mass conscription of men in autumn 1939, the initial stance of the government towards Liverpool's women was that they should continue to do what they had been doing before. The Chamberlain government wanted few women to take over the jobs men had left behind, suggesting that the nation would become confused if women were to change their jobs. However, many pre-war job opportunities such as cinemas and theatres were closing and unemployment was rising. The Churchill government made much more use of Liverpool's women in the workplace. Unemployment fell from 4.5 million to 1.2 million across 1941, which equates to 75,000 to 20,000 in Liverpool. This was in just the first year of the active promotion of women at work. Women's employment nationwide rose from 5.1 million in 1939 to 7.25 million in 1943. This speech from Ernest Bevin, the Minister of Labour and National Service, shows a desire of the Churchill government to make use of women in the workplace. The National Services Act of 1941 led to the conscription of women to war services, such as working in Liverpool's many munitions factories. During the war, as women became more active in employment, there were hopes that by the end of the war, equal pay for men and women would be achieved. However, during the war, Liverpool's women were paid much less. 75% of women were paid under a women's schedule in 1943, meaning they were being paid much less still than men. Figures such as Eleanor Rathbone tried to make employers aware of this. However, post-war, there was to be little change, as the Royal Commission report on equal pay recommended the rejection of the demand for equal pay in 1946. This issue still affects our present society, where unequal pay still runs within workplaces in Liverpool. Some work-related changes during the war remained after it, however, such as the removal of the marriage bar and the allowing of part-time work, which specifically helped Liverpool women who had domestic duties to deal with too. Liverpool women also joined trade unions en masse during the war. The role of women from before the war to after the war in terms of work changed very little in Liverpool, which is particularly surprising given the lack of competition from male workers and the role women played during the war. Job opportunities became scarce again with the return of men. Jobs were usually unequal in their pay. They were often strenuous, long hours with little pay and would have to be balanced with their roles domestically. Thousands were evacuated from Liverpool during World War II as a result of the Blitz. Most went to Cheshire or North Wales or less threatened areas of Merseyside such as Birkenhead, Ormskirk or Maghull. The government described evacuees as helpless from the threat of bombings, deeming evacuation as the only form of safety for Liverpool's families. Families were also evacuated due to the continued poverty in Liverpool's city centre, unemployment and appalling living conditions. But the main reason for evacuation was that Liverpool's docks were one of the prime targets for the German bombers. The 1939 evacuations revealed the diversity of living conditions in working cities such as Liverpool to the countryside places such as Cheshire. Many evacuated children shocked their foster parents at the state of their clothes, their hygiene, and their food preferences, living in slums in the city compared to the large houses in the country. Post-war economic policies helped poverty to shrink in Liverpool, however. Welfare for the poor increased too, and a 1951 study showed that only 1.5% of the population lived in poverty in 1950. Liverpool's steady population decline since the war can suggest a reason for the decline of poverty in the city. There was less demand for housing, less overcrowding, less competition for jobs, and sanitary problems started to be fixed. 40% of the original Liverpool evacuees had returned to Liverpool by the end of 1939 because of the lack of action caused by the Phoney War. Schools remained closed, however, leaving children active on the streets during the day. Juvenile crime increased in Liverpool during the war, and so numerous nurseries and play centres were established in Liverpool for young people. Most nurseries and play centres were not kept post-war, however. Following the Christmas raids of 1940, around 1,400 were evacuated from Liverpool between the 20th and the 23rd of December. Evacuation continued into the spring, just in time for large numbers to avoid the devastating raids of May 1941 in Liverpool. Trends point to the fact that the inaction during the Phoney War caused the parents of those who weren't evacuated in the initial evacuations to feel no pressure to evacuate them later in the war, and therefore there were less evacuees later in the war. Many children decided not to return home from evacuation following the war and would continue to live with their new parents. Such were the mental consequences of the war in Liverpool. Trends also show that large numbers of children who were evacuated from the centre of Liverpool to places such as Bersker, Ormskirk or Maghull returned later in life to live there as an adult. Liverpool was also the main port for the evacuation of children overseas in 1939 and 1940 until the torpedoing of the City of Benghazi liner by German U-boats in September 1940. The event saw the seizure of government-backed evacuations, causing changes to Liverpool's wartime port use. Liverpool was one of the UK's most badly hit cities during the German air raids on Britain in the early stages of World War II. Two main air raids during World War II in Liverpool were the Christmas Blitz of 1940 and the May Blitz of 1941. The Christmas Blitz saw 3 nights of consecutive bombings between the 20th and the 23rd of December, affecting buildings, families and the spirits of the Liverpool people. It caused £4 million worth of damage to Liverpool buildings and caused large evacuations from the city. 2 government-built raid shelters were directly hit, killing around 116. It damaged the Liverpool public's faith in the government too. Reports confirm that Liverpool's air raid shelters were inadequate and many felt safer in their own homes, showing a continuation of poor governmental response to Liverpool's social problems, such as poor social housing. The May Blitz saw the death of around 1,453 civilians, and it contributed to over half of Liverpool's fatalities from World War II raids. In addition, 6,500 homes were completely destroyed and 190,000 were damaged. The governmental response to the Blitz left Liverpool as the most dissatisfied town at the post-Blitz administration. Many in Liverpool felt that they hadn't been informed of what was happening, such as who was dead, or the number of buildings destroyed, or what the homeless should do now. This, tied in with the poor result of the raid shelters, made Liverpool civilians quite hostile to the government. Numerous buildings such as St Luke's Church and Bluecoat Chambers were badly damaged after the attacks, and the church hasn't been restored since. Gas, electricity, telephone, sewage and water services were badly damaged during the raids, leaving many in the already poor areas of Liverpool without the basic necessities. Thousands, therefore, across Liverpool started the war with a home, friends, family and possessions, and ended it with nothing but the trauma of wartime Liverpool.